Hi everybody, it's Paul Harris with Global Recruiters of Blackhawk here in sunny California. How are you doing? Hope you're doing well. As you may know, I run an executive search firm that specializes in the telecom infrastructure space and everything that goes along with it, such as IoT and smart cities and etc. And last week I was at the Global IoT conference in Silicon Valley. In the next few minutes I'm going to try to do my best to kind of give you some of the salient points that came out of that, just highlight 4 different speakers. So let me tell you a little bit about the conference. It was kind of an interesting conference because they held it in the same place, at the same time, the same venues, Global IoT conference with Global Blockchain conference, so a lot of the Bitcoin type of conversations, Global Predictive Analytics, and Global Data Science. So I'm going to try to stick with the IoT stuff. So here we go. The first speaker I'm going to highlight was a gentleman named Ryan McManus from a company called EVRYTHING. So it was spelled different than everything, but that was the name of the company, and his title of his speech was Digitizing Everything. And he gave some statistics about all the stuff that's connected to the internet and what's coming. So here's a few statistics from my notes. 1 billion cars, 9 billion computing devices, 11 billion RFID chips, 19 billion microcontrollers, all connected to the internet. But his point was that's nothing compared to what's coming down the pike. For example, 102 billion apparel items. And in the CPG space, so the consumer packaged goods space, 5 to 10 trillion connected devices in that space. One of the things that he highlighted was, so you guys know that obviously Amazon bought Whole Foods, and we've seen that Whole Foods is trying to this experiment basically, I think in Seattle, where you take something off the shelf and there's no checker and it just automatically charges you via the internet basically. Well, Whole Foods was purchased by Amazon for $13.7 billion. On the same day that was announced, Amazon's market cap went up by $14 billion. So basically, they paid nothing. It was free to buy Whole Foods. It just shows you kind of an indication what Wall Street thinks about it, where things going. And there's articles in the paper today about the IoT market growing, etc. So all good stuff. He talked about how we track things now and where it's going. So the barcoding system that we've all seen is 44 years old. I didn't know that. And he said it will be gone in 2 to 3 years and will be replaced by something called ADI, so Active Digital Identity, which basically something is, a product is born digitally, it tracks it through its digital life cycle, and then it dies digitally, and that's recorded and it's taken out of service, and that's noted all through the Internet of Things. And an example of they gave that is, so the apparel industry, right? He said 102 billion apparel items going to be connected to the internet. Apparel is the #2 most polluting industry in the world, and so he said, for example, they might have rewards for recycling a shirt or shoes or whatever it is, and then you would be given, credit for that, and it would all be done via the ADI. So very interesting stuff. So the next speaker is Dr. Julia Albright, who's a digital sociologist and a lecturer at the University of Southern California. Her speech was all about how technology and human behavior intersect. Some very, very interesting stuff. So number one, she talked about how, the kids these days, they grew up in a digital internet environment. They know they've never been in a world without it. They're a fish in water and that type of stuff. Generation Z has always grown up in a mobile environment, right? So in other words, when I can't figure something out on my iPhone, I hand it to my granddaughter. She, fixes it, hands it back, and I feel like an idiot, but she understands that. All her friends understand that. They've lived in that world, never not had mobile. Now the babies that are born today are going to be a fish in water in stuff like IoT, artificial intelligence, smart technology, etc. And they will learn digital before they even know how to speak, like a digital babysitter. We've all seen that, and she gave an example of that through a video that she showed. Very, very interesting stuff. She also talked about the concept of something she called fracturization, which is basically kind of like, these kids living in a bubble, so to speak, right? And just, kind of how maybe some of the, social graces might not be developed as much as they could for people like that, and maybe we're starting to already see some of that, right? And then how IoT and AI and smart cities smart systems can lead to job loss, etc. And I'll talk about that in a little bit as well. Also talked about the speed of digital transformation, and she gave an example, for example, and we all agree that we don't want to slow down technology. We all love it, etc. But it also leads to lack of skill sets, etc. So, for example, the telephone, the automobile, and electricity all took about 30 years to get to 60% adoption, where the mobile phone and the internet only took to 10 years. And so there's a smaller time to react as these time frames are being compressed, and we're seeing that in the telecom infrastructure world with people that may not have the best skill set for 5G or IoT or smart cities or small cells, etc. Okay, the next speaker was a woman named Christine Hawkins, who's from HP, and HP has defined 4 different megatrends. We all like to look at the megatrends, right? So number one, rapid urbanization. So more people moving to the cities, more large cities being created. And obviously in the smart city world, that's great for us. Number 2 is a changing demographic. So we've got an older, shrinking workforce, right? So the pyramid used to have a ton of people at the bottom and then people at the top getting ready to retire. All these people down here paying taxes and getting ready to support them with Social Security. Well, that pyramid has been flipped upside down. Now we've got the baby boomers, right, the pig through the python, as they call it, up at the top, being supported by a smaller number of people who are working and paying taxes. Number 3, megatrend, hyper-globalization, right? It's a global world. And then number 4 would be the accelerated innovation, same thing that Dr. Julia Albright was talking about. And the example that Christine gave was there's the phone, not the cell phone, but the regular phone took 75 years to get to 75 years to get to 50 million users. 75 years to get to 50 million users, whereas Angry Birds took 35 days, right? So I would call that accelerated innovation for sure. The last one you guys want to talk about is a gentleman named Terrance Barr from a company named Electric Imp, and they basically help companies with IoT deployments. He talked about 70% of the IoT projects do not make it past the POC stage, so the proof of concept stage, and a lot of that has to do with the security being underemphasized. That's what kind of derails stuff. He also talked about the 3 different type of IoT deployments. Number 1 is an off-the-shelf, do-it-yourself type of program, obviously cheaper, not customizable. Number 2 would be hiring a bunch of several different vendors. One vendor does this, one vendor does this, one vendor does this, all through the cycle. Obviously more expensive, but probably potentially a better product on the other side of that. Or I think basically what he was suggesting was what he calls a hybrid platform. So you've got 90% of it is the off-the-shelf, out of the box program, and then 10% of it is customizable by a company like his, and then the good point is you get a better product and you have to deal with maybe 1, 2, 3 different vendors, not a whole bunch of them. So that was an interesting concept on IoT deployments. So you guys, that was it. Real quickly for me, I've got a lot of stuff coming up. So number 1 is this week is going to be Wireless West in Southern California. These are the wireless associations from the West region, so Northern California, Southern California, Pacific Northwest, Colorado, Arizona, etc., all getting together. That's always a great show. And then after that will be ACG Intergrowth in San Diego. So these are the money folks, right? These are not necessarily just telecom infrastructure or IoT. These are the money folks, mid-market stuff, private equity, venture capital, investment banking, those type of people that invest in the stuff that we're all trying to get done in this world. Then I've got the IoT Evolution, Smart City Expo, both of them in Silicon Valley, and then Wireless Infrastructure Association, ConnectX as it's called, used to be PCIA, in North Carolina. So anyways, you guys, I will be providing some downloads after that hopefully you'll find helpful in case you weren't able to make it to those. Hopefully this was helpful for you, and I appreciate you guys' time, and I'll see you next. Bye-bye.